Okay, welcome to this video then on planning for the narrative or descriptive writing question on your AQA English Language GCSE exam paper. It's question number 5 on the paper. The purpose of this video, 3 things. The first, the importance of planning, why we should spend some time at the start of this question really thinking about and mapping out what we're going to write before we start writing it. Secondly, the importance of editing time at the end of the exam, so rather than having a little nap on the table, proofreading, checking, editing, making sure that what we've written is fit for purpose before we send it to the examiner, getting rid of those silly mistakes that we wouldn't want them to see. And thirdly, the thing we've all come for, the strategies to help you create a structured response that's going to help you to hit the marks on the mark scheme, especially if you're after those grade 5s and higher. Why is planning your response before you start writing it so important? Well, the examiners who marked your papers last summer, they said that a lack of planning resulted in unnecessarily lengthy responses. In other words, you were writing too much. The more a student wrote, the greater the deterioration in ideas, structure and accuracy. This is good news. They're telling us that we're writing too much. We don't need to write as much, which means your hand will not hurt as much at the end of the exam. They also said that many students would have benefited from a quality, not quantity approach. It's about the quality of what's in your paragraphs more than it is the number of them that there are. They also said that having the confidence to take time to plan was really important, because then you'll be able to craft a shaped and structured response in ideally no more than 2 or 3 sides. And that's a really big deal. Lots of us get stressed and panicked at the start of these questions, and we just start writing because it makes us feel better. What they're telling us here is actually take some time to plan, have the confidence to do it, because the end result will be much better as a result of doing it. They also said that things like mnemonics were really stifling the creativity of the most able writers. They said that if you put things like a forest at the start of the exam, all you're doing is forcing yourself to use techniques that don't necessarily fit what you're trying to write. So we need to move away from those and think about our timings. My suggestion here is to spend 10 minutes planning, 25 minutes writing, and then another 10 minutes at the end editing your response, making sure it's fit for purpose. So let's have a look at a sample question that will look something like this if you're doing AQA. If you're doing other boards, it might be that you get a sentence opener rather than an image stimulus. The first thing to do is to pick out the gap in the question, mind the gap, identify the G, the genre, the A, the audience, and the P, the purpose, to make sure that when you're writing, you're sticking to those things. It's also important here to identify the key emotions from the image or the sentence opener. Are the feelings or emotions of anger or frustration or loneliness or whatever it might be? Pick out those, because that's going to help you to identify the tone of your piece of writing and make sure that those are really present in what you write. So what I would do now is pause the video and practice doing this on the sample questions that I've provided. You can follow the link below the video. It'll take you to my page where there is a whole list of sample questions that you can have a go at practicing this with, minding the gap and identifying your emotions and feelings. Do that now, and then when we come back, we'll look at structuring those ideas into some effective paragraphs. So now that we've got some general ideas, we've identified some emotions that might be taking place in the image or the sentence opener, we now need to think about that planning. And really important that we keep this nice and simple. We're not professional writers. Professional writers take months and years to craft their novels and short stories and whatever they're doing. Let's keep this simple. Think about one character, one setting, one event, one place, one of everything. Keep it nice and straightforward. We don't need millions of characters, and we don't need zombie apocalypses. We just need to keep it simple. It's not about writing a full novel. It's about showing the examiner that we can structure something that's effective. Once you've done that and you've already determined your emotions and feelings, think about how we want the reader to feel. Do we want them to feel sympathetic towards the character? Do you want them to feel anger or another sort of emotion all the way through? How could we make that happen right from the start? Could we include a flashback or a flash forward? We want the reader to feel something in that opening paragraph. What could that be? What might be happening? Then you need to think about your 6 paragraphs. We're going to go for a 6-paragraph structure. The first of those, who is the one character? Are they the protagonist or the antagonist? What do we need to know about this character? What has happened in their life that brings them to this point? Second paragraph, where are they? Where have they been? Where might they be going, and why? Really thinking about those settings and using some time to really describe that setting might be a really key thing to do here. The third thing to think about is, what's the weather like? This is a really good opportunity to include some pathetic authentic fallacy? Could the weather reflect their mood? If this character in our story is having some sort of negative experience, let's think about using some negative weather types there to really reflect that character's emotions. The fourth thing, if we haven't included a flashback or a flash forward at the start, maybe we could bring one in now. And really important to try and create a tone that is different to the tone of the rest of the story. So if the story was quite negative all the way through so far, maybe the flashback or the flash forward could be a really happy tone to create that sort of contrast. The fifth thing, what is the event going to be that's going to create that tension moment, that rising moment of tension? What's going to happen? Remember how we want the reader to feel. If we chose anger at the start, let's create a scenario here for this character that's going to make the reader feel angry towards them. The final thing to do, the sixth paragraph, is to think about a cliffhanger ending, remembering that we don't need to write a whole novel, we're just creating a snapshot of a story. Let's end it unfinished, unanswered, to leave the reader on that cliff edge moment. What I would do now is pause, download the planning sheet that I've provided by following the link to my website, and have a go at planning your own structure for your narrative writing. With the planning stage complete, you should now be ready to turn those plans into your 6 effective paragraphs, aiming for 2 to 3 sides and spending about 25 minutes on the writing. Really important to just keep writing at this point of the exam. We're going to save 10 minutes at the end to do the proofreading and the checking and the up-leveling. When you get to that stage, that 10 minutes at the end, please don't get your head on the desk and have a little nap. This is the final 10 minutes of your GCSE English language exam, people. Make it count. Ask yourself some key questions. Have I used clearly visible paragraphs? If not, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Have you managed to make the reader feel the way you wanted them to feel? Do any words look like they're spelled incorrectly? If so, cross them out. Write down a word that you 100% are confident in knowing how to spell. Do you need to cross out some words because they're boring and up-level them to better, more exciting vocabulary? Have you used at least 6 different types of punctuation, knowing that there are marks for a range of punctuation in the exam? A little exam hack for semicolons: if you're unsure, and a lot of students are confused about when and how to use them, cross out the word because, put in a semicolon. It will help you to get some marks for punctuation. Have you started your sentences in interesting ways? Starting your sentences with I or the is really boring. Try starting with an adverb, or starting with a verb, or a so-so sentence. It was so cold, so windy that blah blah blah. Really vary the way that you're opening your sentences. Don't forget to head to the website mrcrawfordenglish.com/revision. Follow the link underneath the video. You can download all the resources, the planning sheets, the timings, the questions to ask yourself at the start and at the end, and give it a go. You can even send me your responses, info@mrcrawford.co.uk, and I'll get back to you with some feedback as well. You'll be amazing.